What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Once again, another still worth it video, and we're going to be talking about the first game console I'm going to review of 2020, and that one is actually the Nintendo Switch. Now, I reviewed this same console last year and I got a lot of feedback, and actually a lot of things have changed from last year as well. We've got the, obviously new games, new updates for the Switch, new hacking methods, which I probably shouldn't say, I don't want Nintendo to take this video down, but also the Nintendo Switch Lite. And I still think the regular Nintendo Switch is a better deal and just an overall better console than the Switch Lite, but I'll go ahead and talk about the nitty gritty in a second. But the Nintendo Switch actually came out in 2017, and that one actually came out in March, so it's going to turn 3 years old pretty soon, within like the next couple months, and that's pretty crazy. Looking at it, I don't think it looks dated because there's really nothing else like it, so there's nothing to compare it to. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is like a phone, and that's not really the same caliber. So the Switch really hasn't really aged that much because there's not that many competitors that are as successful as the Nintendo Switch. And actually, it's an interesting concept at the start, but it's a super successful console at the end of it. It's a portable console, but also a dedicated at-home console, which is really cool. I love seeing that. Now, since its release, it's been mostly smooth sailing. There's only been a few issues, which I'll talk about in a second, but for the most part, it's been a pretty consistent ride. I haven't really had anything that I had to like quickly go and like dismantle the Switch or go return it or anything like that. There's been a couple things here and there that were really annoying, which I'll talk about, but other than that, it's been pretty much smooth sailing for the most part. Now, first off, okay, this was the successor to the Wii U. It was not a successor to the 3DS. That is something that we learned last year. Nintendo, I think, stated, or some representative of Nintendo stated, that the 3DS line is still going. I don't know if there's going to be a 4DS or whatever. I dropped a concept video on that, but I'm not too sure what the case of that is going to be. But we saw with the Wii U, that was a very weird console. Nintendo needed to fix that, and thus the Switch was born. So for the majority of us, if we didn't get the Nintendo Wii U and had to deal with that and the struggles of the Wii U, we probably wouldn't have gotten the Nintendo Switch at the end of it. So it is what it is, but I'm not really freaking out about it too much anymore. Now, looking around the console, it does look kind of like a Wii U, but it's entirely two different consoles. I mean, it was like something the Wii U couldn't even have been on its wildest dreams. Now, the Nintendo Switch has a nice 6.2 inch 720p display on the front, and that display, I mean, I'll be honest, it does look a bit pixelated. It's only HD, not full HD or quad HD or anything like that. And I think, for the majority of us, I think it's going to be okay. The main thing is that, if you're traveling, you're like, okay, like the display is not that good, but it's not that big of a deal. Most of the time, you're going to be having it docked up, so it's really not that big of a deal. I don't think, for at least me, but I would like to hear your opinion on it. Do you think the Switch's display could have been better? Or maybe for the Switch 2, they'll put a 1080p display on it. Hopefully they do that. On the bottom, you can see a USB Type-C port, which is cool. Now, on the back, there's the kickstand as well as the micro SD card slot underneath that. Now, the first time I bought the Switch, I didn't even know where the SD card was. I couldn't find the thing for the life of me. And then I finally opened the kickstand like the day later, and I was like, oh my god, they put it right there, which was a really weird spot. I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they didn't have a dedicated slot to put it in there, but I don't know. Once you figure it out, then it kind of makes sense. The game card's on top where you can put your game cards in, as well as the headphone jack. So the Nintendo Switch has a headphone jack, which most phones don't have nowadays, but it is what it is. Now, you do have those two Joy-Cons on the left and the right. Now, this is the coolest thing about this console, but also 3 years later, we're also seeing a little bit of a different story. Now, I will say that the Joy-Cons are still the same price since they got released with, and I was actually looking for used Joy-Cons in the used market on eBay to get them for cheaper, and they're still selling for like pretty much the same price as they were like 2-3 years ago, or 2 years ago for that matter. So the Switch itself hasn't depreciated that much, but also the Joy-Cons haven't depreciated either, which is really surprising. I wasn't expecting that. But the thing with these Joy-Cons, though, are that they are so unreliable for the majority, for a small select group of people. I'm not going to say everybody, but I'm also included in this minority. There's a ton of different issues. Now, one of the main issues is the Joy-Con drift thing, whatever it's called. So my Joy-Cons experienced it, and I'm kind of salty about it because it was like my first experience with the Switch, and like I already had a bad reputation, but I'm buying it anyway, so I don't really care. And I've had so many consoles and so many things that I'm kind of used to having issues. But for like a smaller, like if somebody saved up their money and were to buy the Switch and the Joy-Con started drifting, I mean, $50 or whatever, $60 to replace them, that's not cheap for a lot of people. And if somebody had to save up money to buy it, then they have to buy new ones. Like, that's not a good look on Nintendo, and that's something they really need to fix on this upcoming console. If they don't fix that and they have another issue like this, that's going to turn a lot of people away from the Switch. Reliability is a humongous thing, so there's some ways to fix it like temporarily. You can take them apart and fix it that way. You know, there's another way using isopropyl or whatever alcohol. There's a way to fix it that way, which I have a tutorial on my second channel, but it's still mostly temporary. These are all just temporary ways to fix it. Like I said, Nintendo wants to make the Switch 2 or whatever, they have to go and kind of change the way they're doing it and increase the reliability of these consoles. Now that's enough of me complaining. Now in terms of the actual overall gameplay and the gaming selection, I think it's really cool. There's a ton of great games out there in the market. It's not as big of a library as like the Nintendo DS's or the Nintendo Wii's yet, but it will get there over time. I mean, we're talking years and years that the Wii and the DS were out. I would say it's kind of more in line with the 3DS, but it's not really like, it still has a long way to go. But there are some cool advantages for the Nintendo Switch's library, but in terms of like the gameplay and the everything like that, I really haven't had too many issues. Really, sometimes there's like the loading speeds, it's just kind of slow. Sometimes when you load up a game, it takes a long time, but other than that, I think I'm just kind of being nitpicky. It's a really good experience overall. I don't really have too much complaint about it. But the coolest thing is, and I think this is where Nintendo really got it right, they really started focusing more so on the software and even more so on the App Store itself, or the Switch Store, whatever they call it. And I mentioned this in that Nintendo Switch Will Last Forever video too that I dropped like 3 weeks ago. And the biggest thing is that there's so many free games, and actually pretty decent free games in the store. So you can go onto your Nintendo Switch, go to the eShop, whatever it's called, and download these games super easily. And it's a really easy process. Some of them are pretty big though. They kind of require like 1.2 or like 3 gigs sometimes. But I think overall it's a pretty good thing that Nintendo did here, was to put those free games in the App Store. And I think because of that, all these developers will actually start kind of focusing more on developing games for the Switch, and that's a huge advantage that the Wii U, the Nintendo Wii, didn't really have as big and as vast apps and free games that the Switch has. So I think that's a really cool thing the Switch has going for it. Also, these software updates are really, really decent for this gaming console. I mean, and this will make me think that the Nintendo Switch will actually last a pretty long time, and even longer than the Nintendo 3DS or even the Nintendo Wii consoles, because those didn't have the best software experience. I own every 3DS, I've owned all the Wiis and everything. There's only been like one Wii, but those consoles, I mean, they had a really weird experience with the software, and it was very limited because of that. But with the Switch, there's a lot of capability with this console, and if Nintendo keeps going with the way they're going, I think it'll last as long as basically we want it to. Now, in terms of longevity, it's going to last, like I said. The Switch 2, whenever that comes out, it'll probably still be compatible with Switch games and vice versa. So the Nintendo Switch 2 games will be compatible with the Nintendo Switch. Now, if Nintendo makes it so that Switch 2 games are different from the regular Switch games, that's going to be a really dumb thing. I hope they don't do that at all. That would be so stupid. That would just turn off a lot of people from even using Nintendo, because I don't think the Switch 2 will be like a full-on, like, it'll be more like a refreshed Nintendo 3DS, or like a Nintendo 2DS XL from a Nintendo 2DS. I think it'll be something like that. If they were to go and make it proprietary to Switch 2, that would be really weird. I hope they don't do that, because that would just be extremely weird. But I guess we'll just see what happens, And kind of talking about the battery life real quick, the battery life is okay. Most people are keeping it docked, so that's the main thing. But when people are traveling and everything, it's not bad. Like, I've had pretty decent success with my battery life. I just don't take it with me as much because, first of all, I'm not really that big of a gamer, but mostly because of that Joy-Con issue. I haven't really, been using it that much since it's broken off, and I kind of forgot to buy new Joy-Cons. But when I was using it, I wasn't freaking out about the battery. I always had it plugged into the USB Type-C port anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it's really nothing compared to the Nintendo 3DS. Even standby time isn't as good as I thought. I was kind of getting the impression from like the DSi or the 3DS XL, that type of battery life, dude, those things can last forever on standby. But the Nintendo Switch, not necessarily. But the main issue that I had, and the main issue that we've seen since its release, is that when the console fully dies and you have to charge it fully back, so you have that little battery indicator, sometimes it doesn't charge fully, and it just doesn't even charge at all. So it gives you the impression that your Nintendo Switch is broken. And the only way to fix this is to remove the Joy-Cons and then charge it back up. And I talked about this on my second channel. I talked about, the tutorial basically on how to fix it. It was like a 2-minute tutorial, just remove the Joy-Cons. And all those comments were people saying, oh my god, this happened to me. And that video got like over like almost 150,000 views on that like a 2-minute video, which shows that a lot of people are experiencing this specific problem. So Nintendo also, for their successor, needs to fix this as well. It's a very weird thing. I'm not really even too sure why that's happening, but I don't know. Another main thing, the Nintendo Switch Lite also came out, and I would still rather get the regular Switch over that. I think it's a much better of an option. You're able to keep it docked, and also the Joy-Cons, I don't know how reliable the Nintendo Switch Lite's Joy-Cons are. So maybe they're more reliable. Even if they are just as reliable, that's really bad, because the Joy-Cons on the Switch, even though they break all the time and stuff, you're still able to get new Joy-Cons and replace them. So I don't know, that's kind of a thing I've been thinking about. But ultimately, is the Nintendo Switch still worth it in 2020? I mean, of course, this thing is still completely worth it in 2020. There's nothing else better than this in terms of portable consoles that Nintendo makes. So this is an amazing thing that Nintendo made, and I love it so much. I just don't know when the Switch 2 is coming out. You know, usually we hear a bunch of leaks and everything. I thought last year they were going to release it, or 2019, but I guess not. And 2020, maybe 2021, they'll release it, hopefully sometime soon. But with that being said, I just don't know when would be a good time to buy this, but you can always buy it in the used market. You know, I got mine in the used market and it was okay. Or you can just buy them brand new. They're like $300, so it's not that bad. But to end it, it's still an awesome console with a bunch of life left in it. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much. But definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.